Sana Hassanali. I'm one of the co-founders at SoftServe. SoftServe is a game-based learning platform for teaching and tracking soft skills. We just launched about 2 weeks ago, working with a number of schools here in Vancouver, in across Canada, and in the U.S. And we have with us Sam, who is a student in the MBA Executive Program at Cornell. He also does a lot of other amazing things, so I'll pass it off to him to do an introduction of himself.
Thanks, Rex. Hi, everyone. My name is Sam. I currently lead strategic operations over at Bloomberg. Everything that I'm saying here is not representative of that company. But while I work full-time, I am a student graduating in May from the Executive MBA program at Cornell. I also have operated a couple startups of my own, and I launched something last year called Koinos. And so I'm really, really looking forward to talking to you all about soft skills and what SoftServe is doing in that space.
Awesome. Thank you. We're so happy to have you. I always have such a wonderful time having any conversation with Sam. It's like, oh, Sam, can I have 15 minutes of your time? And then it's like 2 hours later on Christmas Eve. So he just has so much wisdom to share that we thought it was selfish to keep it to ourselves, and we had to invite him to join us for this webinar. So my first question for you, Sam, is how was the transition from in-person schooling to online, especially in an MBA program? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about how the process is and whether the online transition made a big difference and kind of what your experience was.
Sure. So I think the transition was relatively smooth because we were already familiar with Zoom. We had been using it for a lot of remote study sessions during the week. And I think that it wasn't so much of a disruption to our daily lives, but what was more of a disruption was kind of our morale, right? Because our knee-jerk reaction was that just a healthy dose of skepticism. We just knew that the virtual setting was not going to be the same as, in a lecture hall with the same 70 people that you've been with for the past 2 years. And so, although moving from one, platform to the virtual platform was seamless, there was already this kind of bias that we had that, it's just not going to be the same. I'd say that like the biggest difference though, that I see between in-person classroom and virtual classroom is actually the engagement over chat. So for instance, in Zoom, while we're speaking, there could be people that are chatting with each other. And I think people are accustomed to this through things like Twitch and live streams. So it was really cool to see how people were chatting while the conversation and the dialogue was happening in between students and professors. And people that were typically quiet in the physical classroom were actually very vocal in the chat. So it's really interesting to see the different personalities come out and shine in the new setting.
That's so interesting. I've actually heard a couple of professors say that they actually encourage the chat because for them, and obviously this depends on the class and the nature of the subject, but it's more important for them to see conversations happening about the topic at hand and getting those students involved that maybe in person wouldn't have been so comfortable to do so. Is so important. So I actually found that surprising. I thought maybe they would see that as a distraction. But yeah, it's cool to hear that even at your school, in such a competitive program, that's also very encouraged.
Yeah, it's been great.
Wonderful. So did you notice that like students with soft skills were with more proficient soft skills were handling the transition better? Like, was there any noticeable like remarks about it that you could share with us?
Yeah, I think so. I think people with stronger soft skills are typically better at communicating, especially during difficult times. And so this is where true leadership emerges. People say that people's true colors show up in times like this. And I think there's some truth in that because, whenever there's any type of crisis mode, we need to be drawing from our hard skills and our soft skills equally, if not more from the soft skills, because everyone's already in a heightened state of anxiety and just worry, right? So I think that the reason why soft skills has becoming so important these days is, everyone's talking about it. And, there's a guy named Josh Bersin that mentioned that soft skills should actually be termed power skills, because these are the things that empower people and make you feel powerful in times of crisis. And so, yeah, going back to the question, did students with soft skills handle the situation better? I would say yes.
Yeah. I love power skills. I love that for so many reasons. I mean, when you said it, I initially didn't think empower, but I love that even more. I almost thought it was like powering you to actually demonstrate your hard skills, or, giving you the tools to get that message across, successfully in the way you intended it to be. But I really like hearing that was actually a case that you could see in a real world application, because we talk a lot about soft skills and how they're so useful, and they're kind of like almost seen as like this hidden background kind of set of skills that don't really matter. If you know math, that's what matters. If you know how to do this, that's what matters. But that's so far from the truth, because in reality, we all work with people, and people need soft skills to communicate effectively. And in a transition like this, I can only imagine how much that must really shine.
Totally. Yep.
Okay, so my next question is, do you think that the online classroom can elevate the learning experience? I know right now, a lot of what's happening is just an attempt to replicate. And I think that's just a survival mechanism, trying to get back to the normal before they can start to innovate. But do you see that elevation happening? And what's kind of your best case scenario of online learning?
Yeah. So, look, I'm at a very unique position also. The executive program is very different than like your grammar school, your high school, or your even undergrad, right? I mean, when you're a full-time student, you're in classes all day, every day. My classes are all day Saturday and half a day Sundays. But I think that from my perspective, the level of efficiency that we gain just by using the technology of Zoom, because Zoom has a really unique feature called the breakout rooms. I don't know if you've ever experienced it yet, but in my MBA program, we would often go to our team breakout rooms, and that takes time to move from one place to another. People end up taking a break in between, and then it just takes a longer time to get settled in and then reset your brain and then focus on the task. So to a certain extent, this efficiency gain using the technology to just immediately go to your breakout rooms, work on a problem or a project together, and then come back to the main conference room for the class. That's a unique thing that we've kind of experienced that elevates the experience. But more than that, I think it's the simple access across the world, right? Before, when we were all physically co-located together, you wouldn't actually get attendance unless you were physically present. And so the attendance policy was very rigid, but it was also to kind of safekeep the entire experience. I think that now that we've all experienced more of the online classroom live, having a little bit more flexibility in that attendance policy is probably going to be advantageous to schools, and actually kind of help create a new norm that might potentially elevate the learning experience in the future.
Yeah, it's so cool to hear you sharing this, because I've been fortunate enough to talk to a professor at Cornell who's actually going to be using SoftServe, and a lot of what you're experiencing has been part of his mission to try and replicate in the classroom for students like yourselves. And I think it's so cool that it's matching up, right? Because so often you hear this was our plan, this was our intended goal and objective, and then you hear the actual student experience. And I think that higher level education, universities, probably because at least from what I've seen, have moved into the remote work and self-isolation a little bit before the public sector, that they're really catching it up and they're really doing a good job for the most part of trying to figure out solutions. The public sector and in K to 12, I'm still hearing a lot of frustration from students. I talk to a lot of students through our Instagram who are telling us, their opinions and their frustrations. And I keep reminding them, like, don't worry, it's all going to work out. It's just a matter of catching up, and it takes a while. It's a big change. So I think that, sharing this clip with them will probably be really hopeful to see, like, it does catch up and it does match up. And in fact, it does actually elevate the experience.
Yeah. So I think what I'm hopeful is that more people will get to embrace the online learning experience, because it's not going away anytime soon, right? I mean, New York City schools are shut down for the rest of the year. People are talking about it being shut down all summer and potentially in the fall. And I actually have a friend of mine. She's a teacher at one of the poorest elementary schools in Queens. But her problem was that even families that don't have an internet access or don't have a device, right? That was the first struggle that they had to overcome. Whereas I had other friends who were living in the suburbs, and their schools that might be in a better, I guess, socioeconomic status. I mean, everyone was ready to go live kind of the following week. Right. And so that disparity too, I think if we close that gap, then like the access to these learning tools online, whether they're recorded or live, could actually be benefited by more people. So yeah, that's just another thought that I had. Getting devices into the communities that need them most is probably another thing that we should focus on.
Yeah, you're right. That's so important. And I think that it's like a web of different obstacles that we're going to experience as we move on, right? Like, there might be really great solutions, but like how many students will get access to them? Yeah, we're opening up the door for more students, which is wonderful, but like, how do we account for the students that we currently have in our system and make sure that they're still getting the best education possible? And that actually reminds me of when we were doing our research to figure out how we come up with a soft skill tool. I personally was very baffled by how clunky and not user friendly, and just like how much like bandwidth was required to run so many, education platforms. And I just thought, I have pretty good internet here, and I'm having so many like issues with this, platform, like slowing down, crashing, freezing on me. And so that was a really big thing that we realized is when you create accessibility, it means so much more than just user-friendly devices. It means like, how's this going to run in all different types of socioeconomic communities? And is this something that's actually going to be device agnostic? Because we have to remember there's not just, iPhone users and Google and Samsung. There's so many different devices, right? And people have old devices. And so I think it's really nice to have that reiterated, because I think we all kind of forget when we're at a place of comfort that not everyone is there.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'm like the most curious about the comparison here, because you are working full-time and a full-time student, which like, I don't even know how you do that. I know it's consolidated over the weekend, but it's still like, full-time, it's consolidated. So having gone through that transition to remote work and remote schooling, like, how does it compare in the workplace, in the classroom? What were some of the similarities, differences, and how is the adjustment?
Yeah. So I think that for school, it felt a little bit more natural. Because we were already doing remote study review sessions. And for work, although I had a couple of days of work from home, the culture of the company wasn't traditionally kind of a work from home friendly place. It has since been totally changed, right? And I think that this has changed a lot of work cultures. I mean, I have a lot of friends that kind of echoed the same thing. But the biggest change in your daily ritual is, I think, where I felt the most impact. So, I would get up, take a shower, and then go into the train, and then go into the city, and then get there, and then there's this whole routine that that commute all of a sudden just disappeared. And so there's a couple of YouTube videos out there of like the differences between pre-COVID and peri-COVID as it pertains to your happiness and your commute. And so, yeah, the adapting of the new habits was probably where I felt the most personal transition. But like the technology was there. We are always doing video conferencing with work also with colleagues across the globe. So seeing now my New York colleagues in their homes, that was also a bit of a transition. Sometimes there would be the little tours of people's homes or rooms before the meeting would actually start.
Right.
And so that was also neat to just kind of be in each other's personal space and to get to know each other and build that kind of relationship that, you just didn't really have a chance to build before because you were always in the office together.
Yeah. Well, my favorite thing that I saw, it was like one of those memes, and it was like, oh, scientists say it's important to keep up with your daily routine. And you'd see like people, especially in New York, the example I'd see was like, they'd be like, have their coffee in their mug, their jacket, and they'd hold on to like their shower curtain, like they were on the subway, and they would just kind of pretend they were riding in. And I just thought it was so funny. And it's so true. Like I'm personally, and I'm not alone in this, I'm sure, like I hate commutes, like for work. And I've been working remote with our team has for the last 2 years, with the exception of we had an office for a few months. But so for us, that part of the transition hasn't been the most challenging. But when we did switch back from being remote, having an in-person office to back being remote, my biggest concern was definitely the culture. Because when you're physically there and with each other, you can, it's natural. It's the environment is already facilitated for you to be able to build that culture organically. Even if you don't intend to build it, it will happen, right? It's hopefully the good one that you're trying to build. And I found that that's actually one of the biggest concerns I think a lot of people and companies have when switching online is it's less about can we actually do the work, because for most companies, it's actually very possible to get the tools you need to have your team working remote and be as productive, if not more productive than before. I do think people are worried about the culture part. And I think that comes back down to, the soft skills that you develop when you're in person, having those conversations with people, having to sit next to somebody, having to interact with people on your team that you don't normally interact with. How's that going to be? Is there going to be any misunderstandings over Slack, over email? Are my intentions going to be seen incorrectly? So it's nice to know at a company like yourself that was traditionally very in person, that they were able to make the switch. And similarly with your experience at the university at Cornell, I think that speaks volumes to what's possible.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, my next question is, okay, so Sam, and I know I'm not trying to make you blush, but it's probably like one of the best leaders that I've personally experienced. You're so empathetic, you're so dynamic. Like I feel like it's like 20% therapy session, 80% okay, what are our next steps? How do we move forward? And work on the team growth. And so from your experience, and then also during the shift, how has adopting soft skills helped you as a leader, both, in the workplace and, as a team leader in the classroom, in your friendships? How have you seen kind of as those skills develop, maybe through work or through the classroom, but they can help you in other parts of your life?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that going back to the phrase soft skills or power skills, if you Google or do any type of research on sociology or psychological artifacts for the development of soft skills, you'll see the 7 core principles or all these other things that make up how to develop your soft skills. I'm a huge frameworks person. I create frameworks. I use frameworks to develop business strategies. And so when I thought about building a framework around soft skills, I thought about a triangle and how the three different points of the triangle would stand for emotional intelligence, communication, and time. And so you can remember this as ECT or etc. So in this triangle, your emotional intelligence is really about your cognitive and emotional empathy towards people and situations. The communication point, it's all about listening as well as language that is both spoken and written. And as it pertains to the spoken language, it's also being sensitive to people's accents and also using your own accent to leverage the context that you're speaking with someone who might be from another country. From the time side of things, it's how you manage your personal time, which then effectually leads to how your personal work ethic. And so when you are balancing all these three things, in the very middle of this is like the teamwork and the collaboration that you then exchange with your teams. And so if you apply that framework in any type of setting, whether it's the workplace, the school, your family, your friends, it's all encompassing. And so you draw from that. And I think that being, again, aware of all of those things that amount to the soft skills as a whole is just really important to just kind of be engaging, be present, and really care about whatever it is that you're going through at the moment with that person at the other end.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's perfect. Now I have this visual triangle that I can think of, and everyone else here can take home with them and then use in different examples. And I like that you gave an example for each one of those, because I do think with soft skills, sometimes people know the definition very well, but when it comes to applying it, it's a bit more challenging. And a bit more challenging to do to remember the application if you're not doing it kind of often, right? Like I always think of soft skills as a muscle that you have, and you want to make sure that you're always kind of giving it some attention, like meditating almost like 5 minutes a day. It doesn't have to be a lot, but I think it just, like you said, puts you in the mindset or the mental framework to tackle the day with kind of the best like empathetic, strong communication skills, and just achieve what you're trying to achieve in the most understanding way. I think that's a big thing that happens in friendships and in work is just a miscommunication. And I think a lot of times, a lot of issues, problems, and things like that could be resolved with just clearer communication. But that is a much harder thing to do than just to say.
Yeah, but I mean, you just mentioned a really interesting thing about meditation because, so during this time of self-quarantine, I actually started doing yoga. And so I've been, rummaging through YouTube videos and practicing and gaining flexibility. But the vinyasa yoga programs that I've been experiencing always end in this like time of meditation. Mm-hmm. I always fall asleep. But it's been really good to just kind of clear the mind and then kind of come back into whatever it is that I was working in afterwards. So
yeah.
Well, I hear that falling asleep is actually really good. It means that you're actually like you've successfully done the meditation. Your body is like in the perfect state of like tranquil where it can like,
Oh, nice.
So, sounds like you're doing it. It sounds like you're doing it right. I've actually heard a lot of people starting to meditate during this time. I think that's like the best thing that you can do. And I think meditation can look so different for everyone. But I think it's just nice to give yourself and your mind some time to just be still, because I'm personally really bad at just chilling out. And I'm sure a lot of people here can probably relate.
Yeah, I mean, again, wherever you are, if you're self-quarantined now for the first time, I mean, it's been over a month for me. But like it is important to rest. The mental wellness is just so important. That bookshelf behind me, if you notice, I spent the whole day actually just tearing that down and then putting all the books back up, and you'll actually see the queue up game like right there.
Oh, I see it. Oh my gosh, yay! That's so awesome.
Yeah, just taking care of errands and chores around the apartment. That also helps.
Well, that is the perfect segue into what I am really excited to share with everyone. So if you're wondering what Queue Up is, I will be very excited to tell you right now. So thank you, Sam, for answering those questions. We're going to jump in, and I'm going to show you guys through share screen what Queue Up is, what we've been doing, and then there's some questions that are coming in at the bottom. Please throw your questions at the bottom for Sam. We're going to jump right back into those in about 5-10 minutes, and you'll have all your answers from Sam. So let me just share my screen. Please let me know if you can't see it. All right, so hopefully you all can see my screen. So today, what I'm really, really excited to share with you all is SoftServe. So SoftServe is what myself and my team have been working on for the last 2 years. And I just had the login information here a second ago, but of course, there we go. It can't be that easy, but it'll just stay up. And so we've been building this platform that teaches and tracks soft skills. And one of the main things that was really important to us was to create something that was not just scalable, and by that I mean something that can be used in a classroom regardless of the number of students you have, but something that also actually allows you to track the skills that you're teaching. And so what our platform does is it actually does track the progression of those skills. So empathy, curiosity, communication, creativity, it's all tracked here. And the most exciting part is you can interject your existing classroom content into the game. And so the platform is called SoftServe, and that's a tracking and teaching technology. And we have games on our platform. And what Sam was talking about is the game called Queue Up. So Queue Up is our first game, and it initially started off as Post-its. We'd have problem statements that we'd write out on Post-its, and we'd underline certain words that you couldn't use in your response. We tested it out with a bunch of teachers, and they really liked it, and they wanted us to create a card deck that they could use. And so we actually created the card deck, and that was actually what we were using for over 6 months, almost a year. And we started to find that the feedback we were getting from our teacher partners was, this is an awesome game, but I would love to be able to use my content. You know, when I'm teaching totalitarian governments, or if I'm teaching math, how do I get my students to be empathetic, creative, and curious about those topics? And so we were like thinking of different ways we could do that. And that's what landed us on a solution using technology. And so how this works is you log into your dashboard just like I did. You click start game, and over here you get access to the first. So right now there's just the first game, Queue Up, so it'll automatically take you there. And so you do is you go to pick a problem statement. So here you have the option to pick from one of our preset ones. And this is just kind of a way to get you into the game and understanding how it works. We do have decks that are available that you can review different topics. So let's say you want computational thinking problem statements, or you want big data problem statements. We have access to all of that. And all of this is absolutely free for educators. And so let's say I want to create my own problem statement. So I'm going to say the future of learning is remote. I go ahead and I write it here. I click next, and you'll see here that you have the option to select words that are going to be forbidden. And what that means is your players or students can't use those words in their response. So what we're asking players to do is tell us who cares and why they care that the future of learning is remote. Now you can, if you like, select words that you don't want them to use. The future, learning, and remote. And what we found in our research is that when you remove the subject from the sentence, you're encouraging the player or student, in this case, to think critically and empathetically about who or what would be affected by this statement and why they'd be affected by it. And so maybe they might not care that the future of learning is remote, or maybe they don't really understand how it being remote matters. But when we remove those words, it starts to get thinking, okay, well, I guess I care, or maybe my mom cares, or maybe my instructors care,
maybe my landlord's care, and so forth. So there's no right or wrong answer. You can also, if you just want to facilitate discussion, not select any forbidden words. And so the game will automatically break students out into teams of 4, up to 2 to 4, and you can decide, you have that option. When you do that, so let's say we don't want to have any of the forbidden words selected, so we just move forward like this. It'll create your problem statement, you generate a shareable code, and you just share this with your students. We're in the process of working with Google for Classrooms. So in the coming weeks or months, you'll be able to automatically clip this into the classroom clipboard on Google for Classrooms. But for now, you can just copy it, share it through Zoom chat or email, however you're communicating with your students. And then they automatically will be able to join your team. Right now, we don't actually have a game we're starting, but if we were, you'd see all the players coming here. It would run the game. It takes 5 minutes, and you have access to all of the responses. So at that point, you could then anonymously facilitate discussion. You get a gauge of what your students' opinions and thoughts are on the topic. And it would allow you to, in real time, adjust your content, your curriculum to better accommodate for, engage learning based on your class's opinions, their thoughts on the situation, or really where they fall in terms of their understanding of the topic. And so that's a platform that we've been working on, and that's what I often speak with Sam about on how do we build for this and how do we do that, and he's just so helpful in providing me with really valuable feedback on and how to think of this and how to be able to bring this to more educators like yourselves. So this is what we're working on. We're piloting it currently with some schools. Like I said, Cornell University is one of our pilot schools, and we also have some schools locally here, SFU and some in New York as well. So if you're interested, I'll send you some information afterwards, and I'm happy to chat with you to see if we can work with you on that. And let's jump back into your questions for Sam here. All right, so let's see. So our first question is from Sid. How are employers considering the importance of, and more importantly, testing the soft skills of prospective candidates? These can be hard to measure unless the person has been working in the organization for a while. Great question.
Yeah, so thanks for the question, Sid. I'd say that look, every interview process is an assessment of your soft skills and hard skills, right? So if I go back to kind of the framework that I mentioned, I talked about the emotional intelligence, your cognitive and emotional empathy towards people and situations. Well, during an interview, you might get questions like, oh, tell me about a problem where you were faced with some sort of difficult situation, whether it was with your colleague or your manager, and how did you, go about solving for that or overcoming that difficult situation? Another common thing that they're looking for in a question like that is, what are your listening skills? Like, did you actually listen to the question? And how are you communicating back, right? And so that's part of that triangle that I mentioned. Other types of interview questions will also have problem-solving live exercises, whether it's manipulating data or if you're a programmer, go work on this algorithm or show what algorithms you're using. And effectively, they're measuring how you use your time. And so sometimes you'll just be going into like research mode for 90% of the time, like Albert Einstein, and then spend 5 minutes actually developing a problem, developing a solution. But how you effectively manage your time, people are also assessing during that interview process. So in summary, I'd say, measuring soft skills is definitely part of every single interview that you would go through.
It's so interesting to hear that that's what a lot of employers are measuring for, because a lot of the professors I've been speaking with, those are two things that they are the most concerned about. Is this one, just being for whatever reason, people aren't just understanding the question that's being asked. It seems almost obvious, but I think there's a lot of communication on their end that I think makes those questions a bit more challenging. And I think And I think also just like maybe not really focusing on the question at hand and trying to just get out an answer, because we're so prompt, we're so quick to want to come up with a solution that we don't spend enough time on what the question is really asking for us and thinking about it. Like you said, I think a big part of before we actually execute on something is thinking about what we're being asked to do. Oh, Sid said thank you.
You're welcome,
So
Sid.
polite.
One thing about that, though, if I can expand a little bit more.
Yeah.
So, I had several years as a consultant, and I've interviewed with a lot of consulting firms. I've also been the interviewer. And one of the things that you would actually do is always, people shy from this, but I would encourage to actually repeat the question, asking the interviewer, is this what you're asking for? To really make it crystal clear that, okay, you really get the question. Because sometimes you'll actually learn more about what they're looking for, or the type of answer that they're looking for. And that little bit, extra information that you now have will help you formulate a more, a proper response that is stronger than just kind of jumping the gun and trying to give your knee-jerk reaction to that question.
I actually love that piece of advice. As you were saying that, I was thinking of all the times where I've been on both sides, whether it's I'm applying for a job or I'm asking questions or I'm the one that's being asked. And every single time, almost not every single time, but I'd say like 80% of the time, someone asks my question in a rephrasal, I'll be like, well, I kind of mean, and then it's totally, I give more information or specify, because it's funny how like when you ask a general question, sometimes when it's rephrased to you, it feels too general, and then you want to like give a bit more information. So that's actually a very good tip. Very, very good. Okay, let's see what we have over here. So I think that's all the questions that we have submitted right now.
I see something from Kayali, actually. She said,
perfect.
They said, which areas, thank you. Which areas or departments are the universities are testing this out? Is this faculty or student services? Do you want to take that question?
Yeah, sure. So it has been student services so far. We do have some schools that are interested in having this be a part as well for education, like professional development training, but so far it's mostly been student services, and the departments have been in business. So we have some managerial accounting, we have some entrepreneurship, we have some mathematics classes, we have some liberal arts programs as well. So it's quite varied. And one of the things that I'm really excited is we are creating some statements for the STEM courses, because I think that's a bit harder for a lot of professors to see the application of the game, and so we're coming up with these statements for you to support that. So yes, so far it's been mostly student services and what we've been seeing go live, but we're in talks with some schools locally here, some of the big ones that want to actually use it for professional development training, because a lot of their employees are having a hard time being like developing or demonstrating, I guess more accurately, their skills using Zoom and things like that. Thank you. That was a very good question.
Yeah. Hey, Rox, I was thinking, can we play a quick round?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. Did you just quickly hop over there and get it? Because I didn't even see you move.
I did when you were presenting the digital version.
Oh, I love it. Okay, yeah. So Sam has the card. This is probably version 1. Oh my gosh, this is really nostalgic to see.
I like this statement.
Okay.
How should we do this? Should we just have people kind of write their answers in the chat?
So what I will do is, Sam's going to show you what we call a problem statement, or we're calling it a statement now. And there's going to be a couple of words in there that are underlined or forbidden. And so you can tell us who cares and why they care without using those words, and just drop them in your chat. It'll be nice and fun.
Okay. So the statement is, can you read this?
Avocados are high in fat.
Yes. Avocados are high in fat.
And our forbidden words are avocados and fat, or is high as well there?
High. Yeah, so
okay.
Avocados high in fat. are
All
the
right.
forbidden words?
So again, the statement is avocados are high in fat, and you can't use the words avocados, high, and fat. So who cares and why they care? I'll play two, so I'll submit my response here. Remember, there's no wrong answers. It's just for fun to get you in the mindset. So. All right. Oh, mine's privately. Let me try again.
All right, I'll do this one.
Oh, very good. Any other responses? Don't be shy. So the idea behind it, as you can see here, is now we've kind of brought in two different perspectives. So Sam coming in with the ketogenic dieters, me talking about fitness influencers and their ability to promote. We have Vanessa, who's talking of people who love yummy foods, because yes, they are very delicious. I just bought like 5 and they're all already ripe, so I got to make guac now. Oh, okay, we got farmers, because their livelihood depends on selling fruit. Oh, I love this. We're talking about the economics of the supply chain here. And this is what's so cool about this is you people are responding in from different perspectives. And now as a professor, you're actually able to talk about like, what does it mean to be a farmer when avocados are doing really well? And what does it mean when they're doing poorly? There's so many cool things that you can kind of relate back to the curriculum when you get students in the mindset of, oh, I guess avocados, there's a whole economy there of demand and supply. Wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining us. If you have any more questions for Sam, feel free to drop them in the email that I'm going to send after, and I can share them with him. And if he has some time, he can throw some responses back at us. If you're interested in SoftServe, please get in touch with me. We're going to be doing our pilot, so we're only taking on a handful of schools, but if this is something that you really see as being able to support your students, we'd be happy to work with you. And again, it's 100% complimentary during the pandemic, because this is a big challenging time for us all, and I know educators are really in the heat of it all, and we want to support you as much as we can. So thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful day. Thank you, Sam.
Thanks for having me. See ya.
Yeah, bye. Thanks.